Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We are about to set off on a massive adventure. I call it the Great Sorting Quest. We're going to figure out exactly how scientists make sense of all the wild, wonderful, and honestly, sometimes really weird forms of life on our planet. Let's get right into it.
Before we jump in, here's our quest map for today. First, we'll look at the chaos of the natural world and find the solution. Next up, we'll check out the very first attempt to organize the world, along with some sneaky rule breakers. Then, the upgraded system, and finally, a summary and a boss battle quiz.
All right, Section 1, the chaos and the solution.
Imagine stepping outside and trying to count every single type of living thing. It's impossible, right? Earth has over 15 lakh. That's 1.5 million different kinds of living organisms, and they show infinite diversity, meaning literally no two individuals are exactly alike. So here's our big question for today. How on earth do scientists study millions of living organisms without getting completely confused? I mean, studying them one by one would take forever.
Well, the secret is classification. Think about your school library for a second. It has thousands of books. If they were all just tossed into a giant pile in the middle of the room, you'd never find your favorite manga or science book. Instead, they're neatly sorted by subjects and authors. Scientists do the exact same thing with living organisms. Classification is simply the process of grouping living things on the basis of their similarities and differences. So, whenever you hear this scientific word, just picture your perfectly organized school library.
So why do we absolutely need this library system for life? Well, here are the superpowers of classification. First, it makes studying living organisms so much simpler and easier. Second, easy identification. If you find a mysterious bug, you quickly know where it fits. Third, it places organisms into distinct, clear groups. Fourth, it shows relationships, like how closely related a house cat is to a tiger. Fifth, it helps us trace evolution, showing how simple organisms became complex over millions of years. And lastly, it avoids confusion in science. Total order out of total chaos.
Moving right along to Section 2, the first attempt and the rule breakers.
You know, getting the whole world organized definitely didn't happen overnight. Let's travel back in time to the year 1758. A scientist named Linnaeus made the very first attempt to sort out the world. He created what we call the two-kingdom classification. Basically, he divided all living organisms into just two massive groups, Kingdom Plantae for plants and Kingdom Animalia for animals. It seems super simple. If it's green and doesn't move, it's a plant. If it runs around, it's an animal, right? Well, actually, not exactly.
Enter the rule breakers. Nature's tricky, and scientists soon realized that some organisms completely broke this simple two-kingdom system. Let's check out a few of these anomalies. First up, Euglena. This tiny organism has plant-like chlorophyll to make its own food, but it doesn't have a cell wall. Oh, and in the dark, it actually hunts and eats like an animal. So, is it a plant or an animal? The old rules just couldn't tell us. Then we have fungi, like the mushrooms growing in a forest. They have a plant-like cell wall, but they lack chlorophyll, so they can't make their own food. And finally, viruses. They don't even have normal cell structures. They hover right on the borderline between living and non-living. Because of these crazy rule breakers, the old two-kingdom system just wasn't good enough anymore.
Which brings us to Section 3, the upgraded system.
Scientists realized they needed a much better map, and I mean a massive leap forward. We jump from Linnaeus's basic idea in 1758 all the way to a revolutionary upgrade in 1969. To handle all those tricky, rule-breaking organisms, a brilliant scientist named R.H. Whittaker stepped up. He proposed the five-kingdom classification, and let me tell you, this was a total game-changer.
Whittaker didn't just look at whether things moved or were green. Instead, he sorted organisms using four very specific scientific bases. He looked at their cell structure, their body organization, their mode of nutrition, which is just a fancy way of saying how they get their food, and their reproduction. By looking deeply at these four things, he expanded the map into 5 kingdoms. We have Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Now, we aren't going to dive deep into these individual kingdoms today, but you should know that Whittaker's system finally gave those rule-breaking fungi and weird single-celled creatures a kingdom where they truly belong.
All right, we made it to Section 4, Summary and Boss Battle Quiz.
We have reached the final stage of our adventure, so it's time to lock in that new knowledge. Let's quickly review our quest map. We started with the chaos of millions of unorganized organisms, which created a massive need for classification.
The very first attempt to solve this was the two-kingdom system. But soon, limitations were found because of those tricky rule breakers. So, Whittaker introduced the upgraded five-kingdom system. Simple, logical, and perfectly organized.
Okay, adventurers, get ready. Here is your first boss battle question. I'll read it, and I want you to shout the answer out loud wherever you are. Question 1. What is the process of grouping living things based on similarities and differences called? Think back to our school library.
The answer is classification. Brilliant job. If you got that, you've mastered the absolute core concept of today's explainer. Let's keep that combo going. Question 2. Which old system divided the world only into plants and animals? Do you remember the name of that very first attempt?
The answer is the two-kingdom classification. Extra points to you if you remembered it was created by Linnaeus way back in 1758.
All right, question 3. Things are getting a little trickier now. Why were fungi considered rule breakers in that old two-kingdom system? Why couldn't they just be grouped as plants?
Because they have cell walls like plants, but they lack chlorophyll. That means they cannot make their own food. Awesome memory.
Question 4. Let's see if you remember the name of our scientific hero. Who proposed the upgraded five-kingdom classification in 1969?
It was R.H. Whittaker, a true legend of modern biology.
And now for the final ultimate boss question. Question 5. What 4 bases did Whittaker use to classify organisms into his 5 kingdoms? Take a second, try to list all 4 in your head.
Let's see if you defeated the boss. The answer is cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, and reproduction. Honestly, if you remembered even a couple of those, you are doing incredibly well.
Great job! You officially survived the great sorting quest. You now understand exactly why scientists classify living organisms and why the five-kingdom classification was introduced to save us from total scientific chaos. In Part 2, we'll use our new map to explore the very first kingdom, Kingdom Monera. But before we wrap up, think about this. With new, bizarre microscopic life being discovered in deep ocean vents and maybe even one day on other planets, do you think 5 kingdoms will be enough forever? Or is a 6th kingdom waiting to be discovered? Keep wondering, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer.